welcome back to those of you who are watching this morning, and hello to those of you that are joining us. This is Plannercraft, and today we are going to be doing some watercolouring and a little bit of stamping. So let's get started. So I'm not going to talk too much today, but before I get into things, I'm just going to say that Lee has put up the Super Duo mats that you've seen me using this past week, and that's okay, Deb, don't worry, you don't have to apologise, you can always go back and catch up. Morning Mom. So I thought this morning, means it's Remembrance, we do something a little bit quieter, and then if you feel like sharing a story or two, that is fine too. But I won't be talking too much. You'll be pleased to know. So, let's get started. So I'm going to finish off what I was working on this morning first of all. And that's just adding in the outline on this one. And also to finish off the stamping on our last piece. So this vintage paste is now dried fully so that we can work with that. If you did miss this morning, this was the first one we did, and basically that is going to be trimmed up and then have a shape cut out of it for a verse. And I will show all these completed once I do them. They may not necessarily be today, but they will be shared on our Instagram page. Okay, so now I'm going to just pop our little outline on there. And let's get our stamp platform. Okay, so I'm going to pop that in there. When we come to this one, again I'll turn it round, but for this first one, it's fine just there. Morning, Linda. Okay. So now I'm going to turn this around. Going to clean the ink off my stamp. And let's go for this one. So on this one it's up to you if you want to use that stem or not. I'm just going to use the flower. Morning Tracy and Nikki again. Okay, so with that one done, I'm going to move onto the leaves. So we have the leaf outline for one of the stamps but not both of them, so that's okay. I'm going to use the one I do have first, And then I'm going to try and copy it in reverse, so this could be interesting. Let's just make sure that goes back on there so I don't lose it. Okay. So this one's going to come over this side. Okay. So now I'm going to grab that same brush pen. Okay, it didn't work in the Facebook app on iPad. That's novel. Not sure why it won't work in their app, to be honest. Okay, so I'm going to continue this curve from the stem round. Then if we look on this side, we've got a little bit that's going to come around this way. It's going to join it. Then on this side we've got kind of a wiggly line that is kind of loose. So I can take that down there, up, down, and like so. And we can go on to this one and we can do the same again, so round and down. Take that one back up and down, there, like so. So at this point again, if there's anything that you want to just darken down, like the centres of your poppies, we can use the brush to do that too. And likewise, if there's any bits of your stamping you just want to make a little bit bolder, we can do that. So I'm just doing this bottom edge. Like so. Then we can pull up a thinner fine liner. So I'm going to go for a 0.1, and then with our texture paste we can actually do a little bit of that lining manually. So I'm just going to turn this around so it's a bit easier for me to work, and I'm going to come along this bottom edge, and you can use your texture paste as a guide. So I'm just going to stop it just there. Then I'm going to switch side to this side for this bit, and underneath the bottom. Okay, and there. And this one's bending this way anyway, so we can go like so. And I'm going to go around this bottom edge, around here. And then, if we look at our stamps, you can see that we've got this kind of little V section. And we can do that on here, so just take that up and back down on top of your texture paste. It's much easier to do that little bit of detail with a fine liner than it would be doing it with a stamp. And that's another one finished. Okay, so now let's pull out our colour texture paste one that we had. I'm going to go this way around again. Let's go for the stencil. I was going to stamp it, but I'm going to go for a stencil. There we go. going to move the stamp off there. So we can use our stamp platform to help us while we're stenciling too. Just going to move it slightly up there so it's a little bit easier to see what I'm doing. And I'm going to go for that plain flower head first. Now see what I mean about the texture paste, it's going to make that bottom of that flower bump up a little bit. So that means that when we're doing our blending, we're going to get a bit of a softer edge to the bottom. But that's fine because we can always just come back and use our watercolours to actually boost that a little. So let's get my candied apple and blending brush. I'm just going to take the stencil to one side and I'm just going to give it a quick clean with the bamboo. So for those of you that didn't see quite at the beginning, I did mention that Lee now has the Super Duo mats available. So if you want to get those from the website, you can do. So next let's get our detail stencil in, and first of all I'm going to try with a bit more candied apple. Just going to hold that over and just concentrate on that centre section. Okay, like so. Now I'm going to move over here, a bit more of the candied apple, and this time I'm just going to put that poppy where I want it and I can worry about the stem after. So I'm just going to go straight over with the candied apple. So again, I'm going to load up my brush and pop a little bit more in that centre section. A bit like you're brushing your teeth. Then you should have a darker centre like so. Okay. Let's go to our dark green, I think. Or actually, given our apple, let's go to cracked pistachio so it's a bit softer. Okay. And again, I'm just going to give my stencil a quick clean because I don't want that red to transfer anywhere else. That magnet now. And bear in mind your stem's going to come from the centre point here. In this case, getting it where you think it looks right. So I think I'm going to take it about there. take that same colour. Along like so. And I'm even taking another one just there. I'm going to slightly dampen a cotton bud, just in some water. Tap it on the back of your hand so it's not too wet, and we can just gently lift off. It's gone over our texture paste, so you're just lightly tapping, so that it's just cleaning that up. You're not scrubbing. Okay. So again, I'm going to give my stencil a quick clean. Now, also on here, we have the little shape to go in the centre of our poppy, so I'm just going to work out which way we're going. There we go. So I'm going to use some aged mahogany for these details rather than black. And then let's get the back around for this one. So we have another decorative panel, and again we could shape into this one if we want to. So I'm thinking something where we're going to go around this right hand edge to create a panel for the front of the card. Okay, so that's it for those ones, and then I'm going to move on to the chocolate rock poppies for the rest of this slot. If you have any questions, then you're quite welcome to ask those too. Okay. So first of all, I'm going to change my platform round so I don't make that mistake again. And let's pull out some mixed media card and some poppies. So I think I can probably get 2 out of 1 there. So let's go for that one, and also this one too. Do 2 toppers at once. move my distress inks out the way for a moment, and I'm going to switch over to the squid ink because I want to do some watercolouring with you. So I pulled out the Arteza watercolour pan set and also the Inktenses. I'm just rubbing the ink pad over the top of the stamp and then giving it a little tap. Give it a little bit more ink. And very gently over the top. And there we go. So with these being rubber stamps, they can take a little bit more when it comes to cleaning. So if you have an old towel or an old flannel, then they will be quite happy for you to give them a scrub on those to get in those nooks and crannies. And put those back on their respective sheets. So these are from 2 different sets, but the techniques I'm going to do you can use on any hobby stamp. So let's start with the Inktenses. And I'm just going to pull out a couple of brushes. So you don't need anything fancy. So I'm going to go for a number 6. And let's go down to something a little bit thinner as well. Okay, so and number 2. I'm going to use the water I keep separate for Inktenses and watercolours. And I'm going to go for my bigger brush first, and then when we finish mixing our colours and doing the larger areas, we can detail with our smaller brush. So I'm going to start off with some of the bright orange, which may seem like an odd colour choice, but the bright orange is actually really strong. And then we can add cooler tones to it to shade. Okay, so I'm going to start at the bottom of one petal. I'm just going to flick that upwards. Go around the outside edge. And also this side of the petal. And like so. Give my brush a little wash. And I can use the water on the brush just to blend that colour I've already put there and take it right up to that edge. Now we're going to move across to a petal that isn't touching. So in this case I'm going to go and do this right hand petal. And again, round this edge of the petal and also round and underneath, because that's where the light's going to struggle to get to. And if we do a little bit of a dot just like that across that edge there, so we've got that kind of curl back on ourselves. And again, we're going to just blend that in. Now if you're working in watercolour rather than ink tenses, you'll find that blend is a bit softer, because your ink tenses do dry permanent. Okay, so now back into that orange again. And this time we're going to go for this petal just here. And we're going to use the shading on the stance to help us out. So where there's a line that goes into that petal, we're going to take our brush for a little wiggle. Okay, and then round the edge of the next petal. And okay, then rinse and blot and blend. Okay, now if we were to do this petal next, it's touching this one we've just done, so we don't want to do that. If we were to do this bit next, we've not long done this bit, so we might get some smudging there. So we're going to hop across to another flower, and this time we're going to go for this flower head here. Now this one's a bit different because it's pointing downwards. So normally what we'd expect is that we do our kind of shading up here, and it's going to get lighter down towards the bottom of the petal. Now obviously, because the light's going to be coming from up here, that's going to change slightly. So I'm going to come in with the dark colour, like so. Now rinse, blot, and we're going to blend that colour upwards and then out at the bottom. Okay, so again into the orange and round this bit. Rinse the brush, blot the brush, and then we can just blend that in like so. So on this top edge here, just take that clean brush down. That's going to give you a bit of a lighter edge. Okay. So now hopefully that's given this section a little bit longer to dry. And we can go back again, pick up some more orange, and this time start at the bottom again. So where you have your lines and your stamp, you can lift that darker colour up further. And if you need to add a bit more pigment to it, just then go back into that bottom edge with a darker colour and just let it blend in. Okay, rinse, blot, and we're going to blend that up. And let's just soften that top edge where that light's hitting. And there we go. So now I'm going to go and do this bit over here. So this is where you want to start paying attention to the bits you've already done. So this is going to be forming inside of this petal just here. So you want to go a little bit darker just on this bottom edge to push that bit of the petal forward. I'm just going to take that up that edge too. And just blend that out. Okay, let that dry again. And we're going to move back down to this section. So again, this time we're going to go along here with our orange. Rinse a block. And that out along the edge there. And along this top section here. Now, right on this top edge, I'm just going to pick up a bit more of that orange while it's still wet. I'm just going to drop a little in, just there. And that's going to make that poppy look like it's a rounded form, rather than just stopping. So now you can come back over this edge here. It's blocked, and just blend that up. And we're nearly done on our flower head. So last little bit. Take a bit more of that orange because it's a bit too pale down this bottom section. Let that blend in. Take a little bit up there. There we go. Our ink's blocked, and we're just going to blend that in. So now we have 2 ink tints flower heads. So while we still have that orange mixed, and while those other bits are drying, I'm just going to do this little bit in here where we're going to see that little pop of the colour. I'm just going to pop that in there. So you don't have to be too fancy with that bit. Like so. So now you need to start thinking, do I want to go stronger with these colours now that they're starting to dry? Because with watercolour, you'll find that as they dry, they're going to lighten. You can then start to go back in and doing a few more layers. So I'm just going to pop it a little more around here. Again, just going to blend that out. A bit more around here. Like so. I'm just going to take that colour that I've just blended and just do a few of the lines, just so it kind of knits that colour in, if that makes sense. And a little bit darker along this edge, and a bit more just along here, just to make that flower petal go back a little, and just blend that in. So same with this petal here, just going to bring in a bit more. I just think it's a little bit washed out. So again, I'm going to let that dry. Now, for the seed heads, we can either go a kind of soft yellow ochre, or we can head more to the greens. And I think I'm going to go with a bit of a limey green. So to do that, you're going to take a bit of sherbet lemon, which is the yellowy colour in this palette. So this is Inktense set number 2. And we're going to get some hooker's green, and we're going to just do a little dot of that through the middle. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. So the orange was bright orange, and we're going to mix those two together. Like so. Now, if you want to dirty that down a bit, you can use some Payne's Grey, but for what I've got on my palette, I'm quite happy with that. We're going to go underneath our little seed head and round the bowl. Okay. And I'm going to put a little bit just in the top, like that. Rinse, blot, and then I'm going to draw a line between the two sections so that we're kind of continuing this feeling of this texture. So you haven't got to blend it all over, just do a few lines. Then this top section, just going to blend that out. Okay. So you should have something that looks like that. So given that our seed heads are that colour, I'm going to use some more of that in our little buds too. So into the bottom section of these buds, or like the very tip of the bud if you had it up the right way, if that makes sense, you're going to put that lighter colour. I'm going to add some water to that palette just so that I can have paint that's a little wetter. And then pick up some of that Payne's Grey, some more of the hooker's green, and a little bit of the Ionian green. And I'm going to mix those together. So this is going to be a little bit darker, and we can pop that in over the top, like so. Okay. Now I can start to use that in my stems. So this is where we would swap over and go, okay, now's the time to go to a thinner brush. I'm just going to get a little bit of water on that brush. That's going to soak up. And we can go very carefully across there. Again, we can go darker if we need to, but it's a bit harder going lighter. So let's just get a little bit more water on there. So again, a bit more Payne's Grey than that. There we go. We're going to get some green and some Ionian green and just give those a good mix. So it's getting a bit darker again. So now we can put that into our shadows. So I was taking that down our stem there. And these bits, I'm just going to bring that in down here. A little tiny bit just there. So again, just going to bring that down that way and a little bit into our stem that way. So you start to get this feeling that the stem is a rounded form. Okay, so now this one that goes behind everything, I'm going to use that darker colour all over. And we can start to go a bit darker still, so a bit more paint grey, a bit more Ionian green, and a bit more of that hooker's green, just to warm it back up a bit so it's not too blue. So let's start by doing this really dark stem that's at the back of everything just here, and then we can drop a little bit in there, just let the water that's already on that stem just put for you, and down here. Down the stem of our leaf there, and then there's a little bit down here. Where it's going to go and be behind the leaf on its way up. So it pops back out just there, and just there, and a little bit just there. And then finally this one just here. And there. Okay. Now if there are other bits of veins that you think are going to be quite dark, you can add those at this point too. Like so. Okay, so you should have something that looks like that. So now I'm going to add a little bit more water to that mix, and I'm going to take this kind of up into this section up here, so I've got a lot of the same colour but it's a bit more watery. And when you first put this on, it's going to look like it's really dark, but it's not actually, it's just that it's a puddle. So as you start to spread this out over a larger area, you can see that it starts to really get a lot paler. So I'm just going to brush that colour where it needs to go. Okay, so now where we've got to the bottom, we've still got that little puddle. I'm just going to blot my brush, and I'm just going to pick some of that up, like so. Now if you want to pull in a bit more of that lemony colour, so that you kind of draw it back into this colour palette, I'm just going to pick up a little bit off my palette. You don't need very much, just a few small touches. And it's just going to lift those little areas. So you can do things like the tops of leaves where the sunlight might catch. And it just gives your leaves a little bit more of an interest. And likewise, if you want to pick a bit more of that dark green, you can just put some of that towards the bottom, and it's just going to blend it back into that stem. Okay. And time has flown, hasn't it? I haven't even got round to doing the watercolour one. finish this one, at least then you know where you're heading. Okay, so again we're using that paler colour all over. And we're just going to touch some of that more yellowy green to the top of the leaf, so we get the sense of where the sun is hitting. A little bit more just there. And it's just going to help pull it that a little bit forward as the branches behind it. Okay. Back into the watery one. And if you kind of go along and do this and you suddenly think, oh, I didn't wash my brush, it's really not going to matter. So let's put a little bit in there. So I'm going all over the veins and everything. Don't get hung up in details. And then a little bit of the yellow. So where you've got leaves like this that curl around themselves, you can use your shading to make one section pop in front of the other. Let's just pop a little bit more green in there. And a little bit more on this curl. Like so. Give that a quick wash out. I'm going to pick up some of my darker colour. I'm just going to pop that along that edge in there. Like so. And blend that back out. Now for this leaf down here, I'm just going to pick up just some of that darker green on this one, just so we get that sense of it's curling out of the darkness and into the light. Rinse the brush, pick up some yellow, and just on that very top tip of this one, just like that. Okay. And into the dark. Can put that down to that bottom section. So it's curling like so. So that's very, very soft at the moment, and if you wanted to leave it there you could do. But I'm just going to do a little bit of a shading to it. So you have two options when you are shading. You could go for a darker colour in the same sort of shade, if that makes sense. Or you can go to the complementary colour, which will give you your shade. So as I've coloured this orange, for instance, I would go to blue for the shading. Now, if you go to the complementary colour, it's going to look an awful lot darker for starters, and it can look a bit duller sometimes. So do just be aware of that. Whereas if you go for a darker colour, it's going to look more vibrant and intense. So I'm just going to pull out some cherry, which is like the red colour. So you can see now where I say that the cherry's the shading, because it is really dark. Okay, and we're going to introduce just a little of that around the bottom, like so, and a little bit just in that edge there. Rinse your brush. I'm just going to soften that along that edge there and take it back that way. Rinse the brush, blot, and this next bit here, because we don't want to pull too much red through. You kind of got to be mindful not disturbing too much of the layers underneath, like so. Okay, next bit around the bottom. So whereas before we took the orange up about halfway, and red we're going to keep relatively short. And just blend out those tips so they don't look too rounded and perfect when you're using your round brush. Just going to pick up a little bit more just from there and let that water just blend it out. Okay, next bit. Just going to take it along that edge. Rinse, blot and blend. Because we shouldn't be blending our water up that high, it's much quicker to do this bit. And I'm just going to put that bit in there, a bit more up here, and then take it up to that kind of edge there. Okay. There we go. Bit just there. And we could do the same down here, so just a little bit that red. Less is more. Okay. And we can just put a tiny bit just up here. So again, we're sort of reiterating that curve. So this bit down here, I'm just going to pop a little bit at the bottom, just because our flower would still be rounded. And I think that will probably do. So there's our infant flower. Thank you, Linda. I would love to say that I will stay and do the watercolour one, but I have plans for this afternoon. So I will be having a quick lunch and then I will be finishing off the next book. Woohoo! So take care, and I will see you tomorrow at 11 when we will be starting the C word. So from here on in it's all Christmas. So take care, and I'm sure you'll have fun. You are going to want to start pulling out your Christmas stash for the next few weeks. So take care and